Okay, guys, welcome to the first live Q&A Takedown Serellan chat on Twitch. So since I've never done this before, Terry's sitting right next to me, looking at your questions and typing. We've never done this before, so it's a new experiment. I have some prefab questions that Stabler gathered from the forums. So I'll probably answer a couple of those right off the bat while we start queuing up your guys' questions that we can answer live. So the first one that we have is from Kenny1550 from the forums. How many single-player missions can we expect to be in the game? Rainbow Six One had 16 main missions. Currently, we're looking at ideally around 12 main missions, and one of the focuses is on replayability of that content. So single-player missions, co-op missions, multiplayer, tango hunt, various different types of single-player additional content on top of those levels. So it's a little bit different than your kind of standard kind of Call of Duty, or where you see a level and that means it's going to just equal 30 to 40 minutes of gameplay. You're going to be able to play those levels multiple ways with multiple different content in those spaces. Okay, well, the Oz91 can see me. Are you guys all hearing me okay? Okay, I'll jump to the next question that I have already from the forums. Oh, the Oz. Let's see. Can the first mission in the campaign be about rescue? Can the first mission in the campaign be about rescuing some VIP guy from terrorists in an abandoned warehouse? Hint, the guy that received a BAFTA award in early 2000s. I assume that's a reference to me in the Kickstarter video. The only problem with that is we've banned warehouses as levels, along with train yards. There are way too many warehouses and train yards, so maybe that'll be a DLC level down the road. Okay, next question from Pest AWC. Will we be able to partially and slowly open a door with mouse wheel as well as have quick open button? That is a very good question and something that we've had a lot of discussions about within the team as far as how we handle doors. And we're going to be exploring the various different options. But one of the features that specifically that I want to be able to do is contextual actions on the doors. So you can go in, and while we may have the mouse wheel kind of option, one of the things I want to do is be able to have kind of canned actions with the doors. So basically like a crack and frag command, where you come up to the door and contextually you simply choose an option and it just cracks the door a little bit and tosses a frag through, alternatively flashbangs and stuff like that. So that way you don't have to open the door, ready the frag, charge the frag, throw the frag through. You can just kick it into the game. All right. So any of you guys got any live questions? Oh, will there be dinosaurs? No, probably not dinosaurs. Udom, Rogue Spear had a great feel. I'm reading back your questions because we're recording this, so people want to watch it. Rogue Spear had a great feel with the pregame and postgame lobby chat with the loadout and team balancing and whatnot. What are you guys discussing for this portion of the game? Very similar type system. We're going to be. I'm actually working on UI mock-ups right now for the. For both the multiplayer lobby system and loadout system, as well as kind of the single player team kit selection and weapon selection. So you'll be able to select your starting weapons before you go into the mission. You're not going to have to do it live or anything like that. Sorry, I'm distracted by the Oz's dinosaur questions. One of the things that we do want to have is for you the ability to either create default kits or customize your kits, so you can have shortcuts to the type of kits that you like, so that you don't need to individually choose every weapon. If you have a good CQB kit loadout that you want to have, or a good stealth kit that you want to have, ideally you would have the ability to kind of create those defaults and name them and save them. And that's just good accessibility, so that if you have your favorites, you can always quickly pop to them. Okay, so go ahead, Tiramisu. The ability to recruit enemy combatants taken down non-lethal. I think it would be an interesting idea to implement. Taking down a trained operator with beanbags or taser, then recruiting him in an organization would be an interesting concept. I doubt that'll be a feature that we implement. It would be a bit challenging on the AI side to have characters change teams like that, but also from a realism standpoint, I personally wouldn't want the guy that I just beanbagged in the face to be covering my back, if that's what you mean, as far as in game. As far as down the road, a la how Mech Commander did it, that is a possibility, something we could look at. But if you mean in action, like you knock a dude down and then go over to him and say like, "Awesome, come join me," that's probably not something we would implement. And I'll pop back to the pre-done ones, since you guys can talk faster than you guys can post. Well, that question's inappropriate. Okay, so this is from the Oz again. Maps. So map sizes won't be as big as Bunker Hill and would consist of smaller set pieces. However, since many people would like to play as snipers, is it possible that the maps would allow engagements up to 300 meters with an average engagement of less than 100 meters? We're going to be looking at engagement ranges and scale. Mark just set me up a gun range that I am playing around in. So I have targets set up at 5, 15, 25, 50, and 100 meters right now. And then Reed is setting up the default weapon files so I can start playing with that. So we're going to be looking at those engagement ranges. One of the things that you have to remember going back to Rogue Spear is the feeling of distance and actual distance are two different things and can really be affected by scale. Off the top of my head, I can't say the largest map, like Bunkers, which is Bunker Hill that you're referencing, I assume is from Summit Strike, which was the largest map we ever made in Ghost Recon, and it was about 650 meters by about 450 meters at its widest. And in relation to that, we actually had 2 single-player missions on that map, the Defend and then the Reassault. So we actually, each one of those missions only used about half the size of that map. It was also one of the least played maps in multiplayer because it was just honestly too big. Although, having that variety is always cool. So I think you definitely could see some longer range maps or longer range opportunities within maps. One of the things about urban sniping is finding the right location. So the ability to gain access to an opposing rooftop or something like that, to where you can have those sniper gameplay, is something that we're looking at. So I can't commit to something along the lines of certain meters, but we are going to be looking at supporting that kind of gameplay. And especially if you're building a map for more of a longer range engagement, spaced out buildings, things like that you can get some distance where it's not as dense. You can do that from a development standpoint and save some bandwidth. Okay. Question near and dear to my heart. Elite Xeon, in today's FPS games, there are a lot of issues with graphic settings getting rid of various plants and grasses. Has there been any discussion to make sure that lower graphic settings will not get any rid of any cover in the game? That is an excellent question. We dealt with this a lot on Ghost, and talking to the Zipper guys, they had similar challenges on SOCOM, where either the grass would render out to a certain distance and wouldn't render past that, or it would change the resolution, so where you thought you had cover, but they, the person looking at you didn't. There's a lot of challenges with grass in games, and one of the ways that we're going to be working around that is focusing on urban environments. The type of environments that we're going to be building, I don't see a lot of like tall grass being something to hide in or take cover in. The amount of work that we would have to put in to support that, where it wouldn't be used that often, is probably not something that we're going to undertake. And so ideally, the way that we build our spaces and the way that we do our rendering, there wouldn't be things popping in and out. That's one of the benefits that we have in focusing on CQB and not trying to do a wide range of different, from an ARM-A level to a Ghost Recon level to a Rainbow Six level, is that we can optimize things for that distance and make sure that everything supports the gameplay first. Will we be able to use this is termless Halo. Will we be able to use an Xbox 360 controller for PC or no? I do want to do gamepad support because we're eventually going to console after PC. That'll allow us to. Me and James were just talking this morning about using the 360 controller to pre-test our UI from a development standpoint, to find out how much of our shell UI would need to be changed when it goes over to console, because obviously there's a difference interacting with menus with the mouse and the keyboard as there is for controllers. And so by doing that testing both for console later on and for gamers that want to play with a gamepad versus a mouse and keyboard, making sure that the menus are easy to navigate and easy to use. So that is the plan. Let's see. A lot of devs these days love you to smoke and dust as well. M. Shumi, on maps that dust smoke would make no sense. Yes, we don't plan to add a lot of dust and smoke where it doesn't make sense. Dust and smoke is a performance killer, and hopefully we can save those for our smoke grenades. Spigs, I'm not sure if it's too early to ask this question, but here I go anyway. I'm a huge fan of building communities within game. Example, going to the same server every night and playing with the same group of guys and creating alliances, as well as server grudges. So my question to you is, will console versions support serverless? So I totally agree with you. I mean, obviously this game's about community, both on PC and console. And in general, I think we've done a good job, especially the moderators, of making this more of an integrated community where we're all kind of working towards the same direction. As far as the specific question about how we display serverless on console, yes, it is too early to ask that question. But one thing I can talk about in relation to that is one of the things that we're doing is talking to MLG, the Major League Gaming guys, and finding out, hopefully from them, about what a lot of the competitive communities want to have and what kind of tools that they've developed and looked at, and how to build communities and have people playing with the people that they want to play with. So that's a huge resource for us to be able to tap, to go out and find out those guys that have been through a lot of different games and a lot of different services and a lot of different ways of doing it, that can kind of help us make sure that we're making the right decisions when it comes to feature requests like that. Once we look at the implementation cost and all those problems, but to make sure we're making the right calls, because as a developer, it is a challenge to go out and look at every single shooter game out there and say, okay, out of these 20 games, which is the best community feature in this game and the best community feature in that game. AAA studios have market research and people that go out and do that kind of stuff. But hopefully we're going to be able to tap into the actual gaming communities and find out what they want and what they need. Terminalist Halo, will Takedown be coming to Steam? We're looking at Steam as a delivery platform, as well as we've been talking to other companies like Desura, and we're looking at Origin and various different digital distribution standpoints. Will there be Claymore? Claymore specifically, I don't think a Claymore would quite be appropriate. It may just be too big. Although we are looking at similar style devices, Claymore-esque, that might be smaller scale, concussion traps and noise detectors and motion detectors and things like that. I've never seen a Claymore deployed inside a building, what it would literally do to that building. I know because again, back to people's range perceptions, like we actually in Ghost, when we implemented Claymores, we pulled in the Claymore range pretty closely because people's perception of its range was pretty decimating, and of course they are decimating weapons. So we'll be looking into things like that as well. A lot of a lot of people are bitching about UE3 as the engine choice. Can you give your comment about that? Some people are bitching, and some people aren't. So there's kind of two groups from the feedback that I've read, and I've read quite a bit. There's one group of people that were really hoping that we were going to use CryEngine 3 as our engine, and I understand that CryEngine can be a very visually exciting engine. It's got a lot of cool gameplay elements. It's a very powerful engine, and we did evaluate. We focused our evaluation on Cry, Unity, and Unreal, as well as we took a little bit of look at some of the more open source stuff. And so that's one group of people that aren't happy with our choice. The other group of people have just had, bad experiences with Unreal games in the past. They just think that Unreal, quote unquote, looks bad. I've seen a lot of comments like that. One thing I would keep in mind is that the new Star Wars game that debuted on at E3 is Unreal Engine 3, and I thought that looked pretty fucking good. So on a visual standpoint, a lot of the visual things that you see are about how the content is developed. And again, that's one of the benefits that we have is that working in a smaller space, having less enemies on screen, having less enemies active, we are smaller scope in development than some of the other Unreal projects that I've seen, like really push the envelope, like End War and the Vegas game that Serellan was developing, open world on Unreal. We are making a game that really fits with what Unreal does well. The other comment I can make is that there's business decisions that go into this, but there's also workflow decisions that go into this. We got very quickly up and running. We're tweaking gameplay as we speak, and it's a robust engine. And I'll have to say, this wasn't my first choice. I didn't go out and have been secretly thinking about Unreal for months and then thought, let's not tell anybody. We did our due diligence, and we feel that we can get up and running very quickly and get into gameplay iteration, which is the most important thing for this game. So not every decision is going to make everybody happy, but hey, that's life, right? What are you guys thinking as far as team size in relation to map sizes? 16 ? More or less. We're looking at 12 to 16. There's not a technical limitation that's there, more of a gameplay limitation. Just finding out how many people feel good in a space. And obviously less people is easier to manage as far as budget and standpoint. But that doesn't affect things too much because we have to support co-op anyway. So it really is about the gameplay and about how many people feel good in a space. So between 12 and 16 in multiplayer. I started a post in the forums where the community can post takedown scenarios. Have you guys been looking at these posts and using them for the game? We are looking at them. We have a giant list on one of our whiteboards. I'll take a picture of it later and put it up. You'll notice that Train Yard and Warehouse are crossed out. But yes, I at least try to read pretty much every post in the forums, so we have been looking at those. As far as the actual scenarios, I've said this quite a few times, but I'll just kind of summarize it again. And how we develop levels and spaces and missions is that we're going to be choosing our spaces first. So right now, Mark is working on what are we calling it? Bioweapons Lab?
Yeah.
I guess I'll announce that now. Yeah. Yeah, so he's working on a weapons lab right now, and so the way that we do that is Mark is designing the space based on what the space should be designed like. And, Mark's background is in architecture, so he's pulling architectural reference. He's got the lobby and the labs and the parking garage and things like that, and building it to make sense. Now, there's going to be some things. There's going to be some things that we need to tweak for gameplay, such as door widths and hallway widths. You don't want to have a lot of dead ends and things like that. But it is based on reality. And so then we go back, and then that's when we design the mission. One, what kind of mission contextually fits within the space? So is it that you're going in to hack computers to steal information, or has someone taken it over and you're trying to take them down to stop them from stealing something? What's the scenario going to be? And then we actually think about the mission design from the enemy's point of view. How are they going to set up, defend the space? What are the different plans that they're going to have? And then we can go in and add multiple insertion zones for the players and stuff like that. So I hope that rambling answers your question. Zegris, combined with the Oz, are train yards and warehouses as cliche as random cardboard boxes? We'll try to avoid a lot of random cardboard boxes too. Hopefully our time to crate will be relatively high. Let's see. Yeah, plastic crates. Shumi, gameplay stability greater than graphics and gimmicks. Yes, we agree. I think I've said this a million times. We're focusing this game to be up to visual standards, and we want to have a good-looking game. But the gameplay comes first, and it's if you go read our company values and on our website, which is posted, and as long as you don't mind a little bit of cursing, you'll see that as one of our company values. That everybody, when they come here and want to work with us, that's the first thing they see. So. Spigs, touching on question 2, if you're building the level first and basing the scenario around it, will you guys have a small contest for us to create a scenario for said level? That would be awesome. Yeah, that sounds like a really good idea. Terry, can you write that down? That sounds like an awesome idea. We really like, obviously the community involvement that you guys have had. When we talk to business partners and various people throughout the industry, they're continually impressed with the professionalism of the contribution that the community has had. People are really surprised that I say when our logo, our websites, built by the community. And so the more community interaction and content that we can, work with you guys to create, that's the whole point of what we're doing, right? We're looking at right now getting the modding forum set up, so you guys will be able to download UDK. We're hoping, we're going to be posting up tutorials. That's great. Another great thing about Unreal and UDK, there's just a crap ton of tutorials out there for how to make content. And eventually, we'll once we get our scale's already done. It's 1 unit to 1 centimeter. We'll post that up. And then Mark will be going in and looking at those forums and hopefully answering questions on kind of level building. And as the weapon stuff comes online, we'll hopefully post early versions of that you guys can start playing with. So we're excited about you guys making content for this game. And whether it gets included in the shipping game is one question, but definitely we want to have a robust mod community. I think if you look at Project Zomboid, they did a really, really, really good job with that, and their mod community is very robust. The Oz, will you be able to use grappling hooks and the ability to abseil? That would be probably low on the feature list. The implementation of that, I think if you look at some of the Rainbow games that have done that, you notice at least in the ones that I played, there were kind of static points. So the ability to dynamically do it in a realistic, uncanned fashion is pretty challenging. So my gut response to that would be that would be a pretty unlikely feature to make it into the game. Now Terry's sending me stuff. Termless Halo, can you shoot through walls like wood or metal? Still looking into that. I don't think transparency or projectile transparency should be too difficult. I'd have to read about that. I don't want to. He's got his headphones on, but I don't want to commit to features. But that would be pretty high up on the list of features to implement. One of the challenges is the way the levels are constructed. You don't want everything to be bullet transparent. We're not trying to build Battlefield where you can sit outside with your M60 and eventually shoot the entire building to pieces. But it's pretty frustrating in a I know I used to get frustrated in a situation where you've got your Neostad 12 gauge loaded with flechette rounds and you shoot the door and the door just flies open and the door's made out of like thin plywood and the guy on the other side of the door pops you. And you're like, that should have shredded right through the door, right through that guy, and right into the wall behind him. So those are the kinds of features that we're going to be looking at to make realistic gameplay. On the other hand, if you go back and look at games like IGI that just base implemented that feature, it got completely ridiculous. You could take your Glock 9mm and shoot through a warehouse wall from outside the warehouse into the warehouse and like kill dudes, and it got pretty ridiculous. So there's challenges. Paladin, will the best user-created mod content be collected and released as an official expansion DLC pack? I think that sounds like a great idea. There's legalese to be done with that, but we still want you guys to have the ability to build content to the standards that we have created, especially the different Kickstarters, and actually create it and get approved into the game. But there should be no legal problem if we did it for free. Obviously, if we wanted to charge for it, then it would get legally challenging to collect content that you guys make and then release it. One of the challenges, just so you guys know, from a legal standpoint with releasing that kind of content is sometimes it's very difficult for us to find out if the content that other people put together is actually owned by them. I think you guys have seen we've run into some problems with this in the past where we thought content was free and clear, royalty free, and it turned out it wasn't. And so we have to be pretty careful, because we could get in trouble if we stamp our name on something and release it and it's seen as a commercial promotional release, and then someone who's made a mod has gone out to Google and downloaded a bunch of copyrighted material and used them for their textures or something like that. So there is some challenges like that, but those are the kinds of things that we want to do. I think you've seen with what we did with the logo, what we did with the Red Saber logo that Boca put together. That's the kind of thing that we like to support, and because one, from a development production standpoint, it just makes sense to do that. But two, I'm a modder at heart. That's where I came from. That's why I'm here. And I know the feeling of, joy to create content as part of a community, have your community peers get excited about that content and use that content, it's just really important to support modding. So, yeah. Let's see. What kind of Mshumi? What kind of diverse breaching methods will be implemented into the game? We're looking at all sorts of different types, from charges to, like I mentioned earlier, the crack and frag. So a lot of those kind of the various different gadgets and how we're going to be able to go into rooms. Spigs, how soon do we see screenshots or in-game footage? That's still TBD. We're working in base assets right now, so we'll throw up some shots of what Mark's working on here this week. I'll get him to Stadler and he'll put them in the weekend update, so you'll be able to see kind of where that's at. It's all gray box right now. We do have some more some concept art inbound that we've licensed some photos from a SWAT photographer. And we're having a concept artist rejigger those and turn them into some nice concept art. So we should have that relatively soon. I can show you, but a lot of the stuff you're going to see is really, really ugly right now. Like our base pistol is like a black block, and so yeah. Terminless Halo, will there be any in-game money? If yes, would it be only cosmetic stuffs only? The money thing is there's a huge thread, and I think it's in the Kickstarter forum, on money in the game. And it's been going on for quite a while. In fact, since while we were still in Kickstarter mode, it's been going. And the general consensus, and I agree with this as well, is some people are interested in a money system, and when it relates mainly in relation to single player. So I beat a mission, I get some money, maybe I can recruit, get some more recruits. But what I and most people don't want it to turn into is an unlocking system, especially in multiplayer, of having this money system where I got the gold AK, so I can totally pwn you, and we don't want that. So if we do have some kind of monetary system, my kind of gut is that it would be focused on single player, and it would be focused around recruiting operatives that have various different skill sets, much like Mech Commander. If you ever played that, you could purchase your mechs, but you could also hire the dudes that were more experienced. And of course, that can lead back into, because once these dudes die, they're dead. You don't get them back. And so, what that led to in Mech Commander is that you'd be very careful about your people when you had the higher rated people, and they went up over time. So even if you got a higher rated guy killed, you could use the lower rated guy and play him a lot, and he would get better. But that's the kind of system that we're looking at, not a bunch of unlockables in multiplayer that you can use to pwn noobs with. Kenny 1550, does Tiffany like her desk that's no longer on top of the fridge? Let's see here. How do I turn this? That's Tiffany's. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Everything's backwards on my screen. That's Tiffany's new desk. So she's not here today. She's working from home, and she's got her little laptop set up. So I think she's a little. We also use it as junk storage when she's not here. So that's nice for us that we can come in and just pile stuff up on her desk, and then she has to clean it up. But I do think she likes it a little bit better than sitting at the fridge or sharing a nice cozy desk with James like she was one day. Currently, M. Shumi, what is the milestone goal on the development side? Right now we're working on what we're calling our vignette, or prototype, which is the single level that Mark is working on, the base weapon implementation, and feature set for the weapon tweaking that Reed's working on for me. And so we're working on that milestone goal of getting that single level up and playable in multiplayer, and then evaluating the single player side of that. Speaking of them teammates being dead, can it be for them to be incapacitated? Yes. Sorry, I should have clarified on that. So there is a possibility of a teammate being taken out of the mission, being rendered mission inoperable without being dead, and that would be based on the type of damage that they took. So if they took a knee shot, from a heavy caliber weapon, then they could be incapacitated for a certain amount of time and wouldn't be able to return until a certain amount of missions were played. Hit me up with another one, dude. All right. Terry, will the game include subtitles, captions for the deaf and hard of hearing? Yes, that is the plan. One of the things I learned at Microsoft, and it's not just for the deaf and hard of hearing, it can be for localization as well. One of the things I learned at Bungie and Microsoft was to really think about people with different abilities, whether it be deaf people, colorblind people, people with physical disabilities. It's really important to take the time and look at the game and bring in usability people. I know some guys from Microsoft that have actually set up their own usability contracting companies. So down the road to bring those kind of people in, and because it's hard if you're not colorblind, you don't think about colorblindness. And it was easy at Warner Brothers because the other design director, Tim Coolidge, who sat next to me, was colorblind, and he couldn't like the hacking in BioShock, he couldn't play it because he couldn't see the difference between the colors. And as a non-colorblind person, I don't think about that kind of stuff. So reaching out to a colorblind person and having them look at the UI and making sure that they can understand it, or reaching out to a deaf person. And these days with the kind of people that we're playing our games, a lot of us have kids now. They have spouses, and it might not just be that you're deaf. It's maybe that you want to play at 2 o'clock in the morning with the sound down so that your spouse doesn't yell at you. And if you have indicators that are audio only, you can run into problems that way. The Oz, I see you drink every 30 seconds. Yes, when I talk, my voice gets raw, and so I drink liquid, and I'm rotating between coffee and water. I had a couple beers at lunch, so I'm kind of thirsty. What is the goal for realistic sound? I get this asked a lot. Leet, I assume that's pronounced Leet Xeon. What is the goal for realistic sound? For those who are competitive PvPers, detailed surround sound is incredibly important. Totally agreed. We've been getting that feedback across the board. The focus is going to be on the realistic sound first and foremost, rather than a big soundtrack. On the sound side, some people might be a little bit taken back by sound and Takedown as far as like weapons fires and things like that, because if you've ever fired an M4 or an M16, it doesn't sound anything like it does in video games. So we're going to be doing, getting those realistic sounds into the game. We still want to ramp them up so they sound good, but they might sound a little bit different than you've been used to. Spigs, what are your plans, features for competitive play? Example, Clan Wars. Back to what I was mentioning before, we're going to be working with teams like MLG to kind of develop what those features are. But we want to support competitive play and clan players. I think that's really important. One of the frustrations that I had on GRAW, specifically in GRAW 2, was that clan and competitive play didn't get supported as much as I wanted it to. Part of that, a lot of that on GRAW was just the launch status of the title. At the time, there was a lot of talk about Microsoft creating their own clan system for Xbox Live, and so we thought that was going to come online, and it didn't. So then we didn't have enough time to retrofit it back into GRAW. And then in GRAW 2, when we finally did implement a clan system, it didn't turn out as well as I would have liked it to because of the restrictions of working on such a short time frame title. So I do think that clans and competitive players, they're very important in part. The Oz, how about in placed machine guns? Possibility. They're not that hard to implement. There's some animation issues. Well, I take that back. They're actually a pain in the ass to implement. When you get into I don't know how much time I spent doing that on Ghost Recon, as far as how the character pivots and what the restrictions of the movement are on them, to whether they're useful or not useful. They are kind of a pain in the ass, and really, how much do they serve this kind of game? Do this kind of do our kind of levels support that kind of thing and that kind of feature implementation? Again, it seems like it's kind of going back to like long distance grass rendering. In game development, you have to really target what you want to implement and have the core stuff be really good. That's as experienced developers, that's our focus. So we're not going willy nilly and listing billions. Emplaced machine guns and helicopter strikes and that kind of thing. We're taking the opposite approach. What's our core feature set, and then expanding from there. Imshumi, is it too soon to ask about art direction? No. What do you want to know? We're going to be taking a realistic approach on art direction. We are working on kind of developing the look and feel of, especially like the UI, the shell menu. We were just discussing yesterday about what kind of approach to take with like briefings. You've got the the Call of Duty kind of satellite 24, and then you've got that kind of old school, the like dossier, and then you've got like PDA and laptop and various different ways of presenting that information. And I think that'll kind of go into the feeling of the title. You know, obviously if we did like you know, manila folders with Polaroids attached to them, that would be quite a different feel than, you know, a modern laptop or something like that. But general art direction, you know, I'm actually starting to work on pulling together some reference, and I've got a lot of reference of other games, and I think you're going to see a little bit brighter and more vibrant game than you're used to, because a lot of our settings are going to be modern. They're going to be more realistic. You're going to see a lot of, I think, brighter colors than you would in a lot of the current games that are more focused on being gritty and dirty and, you know, still influenced by Black Hawk Down how many years later. Not that there's anything wrong with that. There's also a trend, I think, a lot to go that I've seen in games to go monotone, where it's like, here's our signature color set. You know, I think if you take a lot of screenshots of these games, you can see that they've specifically chosen those kind of palettes, and that's not really our thing. You know, so I think you're going to see a little bit more vibrant color and you know, kind of lifelike settings than you would see, and much more variety. That's the biggest thing we're focusing on, is variety. So it's not all going to be set in one city. It's not all going to be set in 3 different locations. You're going to be mission hopping all around the world. So if you're taking down a mission in Lloyd's of London, it's going to look much different than if you're taking down my ubiquitous Costco example. It might take an ass kick, but it is very possible to have variable zoom scopes on the weapons, the Oz-91. By variable zoom, because I think you'd asked before about the multi-optic with like the scope with the red dot on it. Or are you just talking about variable zoom to where I can click through from a 3:9 scope? So re-ask that what you mean. Will it be possible to connect via IP to servers? I don't know the answer to that. I don't actually even know what you mean. So I'd have to research that. How customizable will our characters and weapons be? Characters, we do plan on some customization. We definitely want different races and males and females to be available in the game. We want to be as inclusive as possible. We definitely want to include nationality representation so that you can, show your colors of what country that you're from, and then some set of visual customization on the characters, just to have some spice. Again, a lot of that's going to be developed based on scope and bandwidth. So I'd say at the base level, it will be several different races and sexes and then nationality, the more content that we can get in there, the more customizable visually will be within those sets. As far as weapons, we plan multiple attachment points for the weapons. Standard ones, and I've answered this quite a few times. Optics, obviously multiple optics that you can choose, whether it be suppressed, unsuppressed, different magazine options. Each weapon will probably just have a variety of subsets, but we also want to have a subset of different weapons within the classes or base types. So when we build our LWRC M4, we're not just going to be building the M4. We're going to have the long barrel version of that. We're going to have the CQB version of that. When we build our AK, there'll be this plain Jane AKM, which is not an AK-47, by the way. It's an AKM. AK-47 was a milled receiver. It was only made for a couple of years. AKM or AKMS that the baddies would use, but have that tricked out Izmash or Sega Tromix tweaked AK modern version for the players to use. So lots of variety within that, I know the Canadians love your C7A1. Those kinds of things we should be able to support. Xgris, have you decided on how hit indicators will be shown? Please don't make it look like jelly beans splattered across the screen. I should pull up the PowerPoint where I said, no fucking red blood on the screen, god damn it. I agree. There'll be some kind of color hit indication and screen jerk and things like that. But no, that drives me nuts. Because, for one thing, there's two ways to think about that. One, it's a cinematic effect that you see with the dirt and the blood on the screen, or even like the water on the screen in GTA. And all that does is tell me that I'm looking through a camera. Because if I have regular eyes and I throw dirt in my eyes, I don't see little chunks of dirt like floating in my vision or little drops of blood. If I have goggles on, and that's supposed to simulate blood splattering on my goggles, if someone shoots me enough to have blood splatter up into my face, I don't think that I'm going to be mission effective after that point. And it's definitely not going to just fade away as time goes on. So, yes, blood splatter on screen is out. But, like I said before, we do need to have those visual indicators for, say, deaf people. For consoles, would you do matchmaking only or server browsing like on SOCOM or GRAW? We supported both on GRAW, and I think that's the way to do it. Pure matchmaking has its benefits, but especially on console, we're not going to be able to build the breadth of matchmaking services that something like Halo has, that they've been working on that. It's been one of their primary development focuses for years and years and years and years, and they do a great job at it. And so having backups to, as we've seen, default console first-party Optimatch systems that you can implement into your game, sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. So having a backup that the player can find games if those kinds of systems aren't working well, you need to have that.
HUD system.
Paladin. Will you use a HUD system or in-game communication devices, in-game visual and audio methods to convey information to the player? We want to use as much in-game action to convey to the player as possible. Things like using audio to come across wound states. So instead of having a big cross on your screen that goes from green to red, yellow to red, using audio or animation movement to get across those states. I think we probably will need, again, coming back to accessibility, backups to be able to turn them on. But a default is that we want to go as minimalist as possible with in-game visual. Do we need an ammo count on screen? Maybe, maybe not. Those kind of things aren't difficult to implement, but ideally we'd have at least on screen as possible. And when a lot of those crutches aren't available, then you tend to make up for it as a gamer. When I shoot my Beretta at the range, I count my rounds. You just start getting used to doing that, just counting your rounds. The reason you do it at the range, even when you're just shooting, is it's really embarrassing to pull the trigger on an empty weapon. Makes you look dumb. And obviously in combat or in a forced situation, you want to know when that extra round's coming up. When I do reload drills on the Beretta, I can tell by feel when the slide locks to the rear, and what I do is I load 5 magazines with between 2 and 6 rounds, and then I mix them all up. And then I just go through and I shoot, and you can feel it. So not having some of those things as crutches actually, I think, makes the game not only more immersive, but more more of a challenge, but also more of a victory to the player. Because when you get that sense of, okay, I've learned how long a burst on my MP5 is, so I know when to hit that reload button to get the optimal use of my rounds, and you do that and have a good situation, then you feel much smarter than if your HUD starts blinking like, you are out of ammo, aim off screen to reload. So, yeah. Join game server by IP address. I already answered that. Don't really know. Will you have a user-friendly system for setting up custom scenarios or co-op, or will people have to mod in UDK to achieve custom missions on official maps? As far as custom missions, we definitely want to have a lot of the options available to where you can, and if you're saying custom missions like actual scripted missions, we're gonna any kind of system that we develop for ourselves to build it, we're going to release. But if we don't develop a system to develop it, like if we're doing it all through Unreal Ed, then you would have to work through UDK to do it. But anything that we build, like a mission builder or anything like that that we use, we plan on releasing to you. I was hoping there wouldn't be a prone option. What have you guys talked in regards to that? That is a great question, Udom. Right now, we're still evaluating, but we're leaning against it. In the types of environments that we have and the movements, prone is an extremely challenging development system to put in. And again, for the environments that we're talking about, it may not make gameplay sense. So we're still looking at that, but I'm sure I just opened a giant shitstorm, but feel free to give us your opinion. Am I cursing too much? Probably cursing too much. And now more prone questions. Just answered it. Let us know in the forums. Which firearm companies are planned to be contacted with regards to the use of licensed weapons in the game? It said elsewhere they have industry contacts for this, meaning we won't have to worry about generic names. I do have industry contacts on that, and I can't name which companies that we'll be talking to. We're talking to both. We're going to be talking to both weapon companies as well as gear companies. There's some local gear companies that we're going to be contacting about getting their equipment in the game as well. So as far as the weapon companies are a challenge. So, you know, we are going to be contacting weapon companies, and some of them in the past that I've dealt with have been very open and very excited about supporting video games, and they're happy to send you guns. You know, Beretta was like that. I had a really good relationship with Beretta when I was at Red Storm. FN was really good. Let us go out to the range and shoot the P90s and handle the scars and various things like that. And then some game companies or some weapon companies, alternatively, that I won't name, are just so freaked out about violence in video games that they don't want their weapons anywhere near a video game. And then there's some crazy dude in Russia that thinks he owns the patent to the AK and goes around and hands out subpoenas at E3. So, you know, I can't say for fact that there will not be any generic names. There may be some. It may come down to a point of whether we can have a weapon that's similar to an existing weapon, or we have to cut it. Would you rather us cut it or have a generic name and some visual change so that it doesn't violate a copyright? Alternatively, a lot of weapons have alternative smaller manufacturers that we can contact and license their imaging or imagery to put into the game that's very similar to another weapon. So those are the things that we're looking at with that. Am I able to use bolt-action rifles other than sniping use? Not really sure what you mean there, Oz91. I mean, technically you can engage a bolt-action rifle at any range. If I had to go into this space with my Remington 700 and try to take on a guy with a 12 gauge or an MP5K, that would suck. But Mshumi, I think he means aggressive recon. Yeah, I mean, you should be able to use your sniper rifles in an aggressive manner. The way that they're going to handle is going to prevent you from running around willy-nilly and no-scoping someone in the face, pretty much. So it's just in how you use them. All right. What's our time left? We got about 7 minutes left, guys. Paladin, and good because my voice is going out. Paladin, will you look to have fun failure states in the game? If you fail a mission objective rather than having a mission failure, the mission parameters change, or even smaller story elements change in that or later missions. Yes, we are planning on things like that through good mission scripts. Each mission is going to have its set of rules of engagement that you need to follow. Some of those rule engagements will be failure states. For example, killing a civilian, those kinds of things would be failure states. But there may even be situations where even not extracting all of the hostages might not be a fail state. But they could also trigger other things in the game. I did a lot of work on I think it was I think it was Gra 2 co-op missions, where we did a lot of work in alternate scripting paths. Where in co-op, like in Gra 2, if you didn't take down the radio tower, then the helicopter would come in and it would be more challenging, or more reinforcements would come in. Or if you got noticed early on, there could be possible the guys barricade themselves, things like that, or fall back on positions. So I think there's a lot of options like that, and that's one of the things that I like about our kind of the PMC setup and the variable ROE kind of system that we're developing is each of the missions can kind of play out differently, so yeah. Here he goes, pies and cakes. Either bears or pies and cakes. The odds, will pies and cakes be collectibles in the game, like the Intel and Call of Duty games? Sure. Plans for dedicated servers. Again, working with the competitive community, we want to be right by them and build in the features sets that they need. Siberian Base 2 seemed huge for a tactical map. Will there be at least one that is larger like that? Side Base 2, is that the one with the radar tower that was like accessible by the AI but not by the player? Or was that the one that was at the base of the hill? Like you started up on the hill and then you walked down? Okay, so yeah, if it was the one with the tower, yeah, I think we could have something like that size. Possibly not as much organic stuff outside. A larger layout with but you look at spaces like bio facility. Some of the spaces in Rogue Spear were just too big. I mean, the nuke plant was gigantic. When I did mods, I chopped that up into like 5 different maps. You couldn't even play it in multiplayer, but it was pretty cool to move through. Someone asked earlier in the thing about the maps in multiplayer, and we do plan to reuse our maps, but ideally, we can chop them up a little bit too for different types of maps. Yeah, the map was awesome. Yeah. Will Serellan have a website section for the sharing of user-made assets for people to freely access and use? We will now. Good idea. Awesome, Paladin. We will do that. You just have to make sure that we'll put up some kind of like standard deal that you can put that up. The odds, I hope there's support for free open source library software because I don't plan to model something for the game and not spend $2,000 of software. We're working in Maya, but Mark will be able to answer that question more in the modding forum about. There are a lot of alternatives out there, and we even looked at cheaper alternatives.
Blender free.
Blender, yeah. Will that work in the formats that you're working in?
I'm pretty sure it supports that format. I'll look into it.
Okay, yeah, Mark will check on that, and we actually looked at Blender for our use, but it wasn't cost and development effective for Mark, who's been working in Maya for years, to stop and completely relearn a different system, to save a few $1,000s in development. So that's why we're staying with working in Maya. And so, Mark will look into that, and ideally there should be a free or cheap alternative. There is for most of these formats now. All right, guys. And you can get a free educational license from Maya and 3ds Max, says Paladin. So just take a community college course, and then you can get the student license. DSOL, customize arm patches. Arm patches, yes, everybody loves customized arm patches. We should be able to support that pretty easy. It may be more of a mod than us building. It'd be much easier for us to just allow you to put files in and then trust the community to boot the douchebags that abuse that and make horrible things than it would be to create a system like Halo's badge system where there's a million different things that even then people figure out how to make penis heads with that. So I like arm patches. We'll write that one down. All right. Thanks very much, everybody. That was very fun, and we will do this again in the future. We'll let you know when it goes, and this video will be posted up by the web guys, and so if you want to share it out and tweet it, feel free to do that. And thanks very much. Sorry, guys in UK, that if you actually logged in at midnight, and sorry it was so late. Maybe we'll do it earlier in the morning next time, but I'm not a real morning guy. So, all right, everybody, have a good day.